Hello, everyone. My name is Judge Caprio. After more than 3 decades sitting on this bench, I believed I had seen it all. I've looked into the eyes of people from every walk of life: wealthy businessmen, struggling parents, lost teenagers, hardened criminals. And over time, I convinced myself that I understood human nature. I thought I knew exactly what people would choose when faced with temptation, especially when no one was watching. In my mind, desperation always revealed the truth about a person. But one cold morning, something happened in my courtroom that completely shattered that belief and forced me to rethink everything I thought I knew about dignity, honesty, and the human spirit. It was a bitterly cold morning in November, the kind of cold that seeps through your coat and settles deep into your bones. The city outside looked gray and lifeless, and inside the courtroom, everything felt routine. The docket was full of ordinary cases, minor disputes, small infractions, nothing out of the ordinary. I walked in expecting just another day, another series of decisions, another set of lives briefly crossing paths with mine. There was nothing to suggest that this day would be any different. But sometimes, the most ordinary days carry the most extraordinary moments. You just don't see them coming. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom slowly opened, and a small figure stepped inside. It was a young boy, no more than 10 years old. He wasn't holding anyone's hand. There was no parent, no guardian, only a police officer walking beside him. The boy's appearance immediately caught my attention. He wore a jacket that was far too large for his thin frame, as if it had been handed down many times. His sneakers were worn out, barely holding together, wrapped in strips of gray duct tape. His hands trembled slightly, whether from the cold or fear, it was hard to tell. But what was clear, even from a distance, was that this child had already faced more hardship than most people do in a lifetime. As the boy stepped forward, I noticed he was holding something tightly in his hands. A wallet. Not just any wallet, but a thick, expensive designer leather wallet. It stood in sharp contrast to everything about him. Inside that wallet, as we soon discovered, was exactly $10,000 in cash, neatly stacked in crisp $100 bills. For a moment, I paused and looked around the courtroom, letting the weight of that number sink in. Then I asked a question, not just to the room, but to myself. What would any of us do in his position? Hungry, cold, alone, with more money in his hands than he had likely ever seen in his life. That question hung silently in the air, unanswered. The officer explained the situation. The boy's name was Leo. He had been sleeping in a subway station for nearly 3 weeks. He had found the wallet lying on the street, unattended. And despite everything he was going through, despite the hunger, the cold, the uncertainty, he didn't spend a single dollar. Not one. Instead, he sat there in the freezing weather, waiting, hoping to find someone he could return it to. When no one came, he approached the police. Listening to this, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just unusual, it was extraordinary. Then I noticed the owner of the wallet sitting in the courtroom. His name was Richard Sterling, a well-known and very wealthy real estate developer. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that comes from power and money. His suit was perfectly tailored, his posture firm, his attention divided between his phone and the proceedings. But what struck me most was his indifference. He didn't look at the boy. Not once. To him, this was not a moment of gratitude or relief. It was an inconvenience, something to be handled quickly so he could move on with his day. When the wallet was handed back to him, he immediately opened it and began counting the money, bill by bill, right there in front of everyone. The room fell into complete silence as we watched him carefully inspect each note, as if expecting something to be missing. When he finished, he simply said, "It's all here," in a flat, almost disappointed tone. There was no thank you, no acknowledgement of the boy standing just a few feet away. Then, almost as an afterthought, he pulled out a single $20 bill and tossed it onto the table. The gesture wasn't generous. It was dismissive, almost insulting. What happened next was something I will never forget. The boy didn't move. He didn't reach for the money. He didn't even glance at it. Despite everything he lacked, food, warmth, security, he stood there quietly, holding on to something far more valuable: his dignity. In that moment, the contrast between the two of them became undeniable. One had wealth beyond measure, but showed no humanity. The other had nothing, yet carried himself with a level of integrity that commanded respect. It was then that I realized who truly possessed value in that room. I leaned forward and gently asked the boy, "Why didn't you keep it?" It was a simple question, but the answer changed everything. He looked up at me and spoke about his mother, who had passed away not long ago. Before she died, she gave him a lesson he would never forget. She told him that even if they had nothing, no home, no food, no comfort, they still had their name. And the moment he took something that didn't belong to him, he would lose the only thing that truly mattered. As he spoke, the entire courtroom fell into a deep, emotional silence. Those words carried more weight than any argument I had ever heard. That day, I learned something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Wealth is not measured by money, possessions, or status. True wealth is character. It is honesty. It is the ability to do what is right, even when it is difficult, even when no one is watching. Leo didn't just return a wallet filled with cash. He reminded an entire courtroom, myself included, what it truly means to be human. And in doing so, he proved that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truths.